Santa Monica Filtration Drop Scrubber Overview. These are the 6 new drop scrubbers. They're the bigger ones, and previous to this there was only one scrubber, drop scrubber, and that's the Drop Point 2. Here's the Drop Point 2 just for comparison. And so the Drop Point 2 has been around for about a year and a half now, and so now there's going to be 6 larger drop scrubbers, and they're all physically the same, pretty much the same size on the outside, and we'll go over what the differences are between them so you can figure out which one that you need for your situation. And of course, always important are the instructions right here, and they cover from the Drop Point 2 all the way up to the Drop 1.4X, and they come with a little syringe right here to help you if you need to clean out the tubing, which I'll cover here in just a second. So let's just remove the instructions. Always a good idea to read these first from beginning to end before you start using your scrubber. Alrighty, and also for the comparison's sake, the old Drop Point 2, well, it's the current Drop Point 2. It's not old, but it is the first drop. And so just for a comparison, you can kind of see how that compares. Here's the side view. Okay. Alrighty, so it's much smaller. And of course, that's what allows the Drop Point 2 to go into very small spaces. But if you're really looking to do any kind of real filtering, you'll need to consider one of the larger drops, because they have enough room to actually grow some sizable amounts of algae inside them. The other thing we have here is a new shade screen. The Drop Point 2 had come with a little bitty black cloth inside, which was fine, but that's really all you had space for. These here are going to have this black plastic shade material. Okay, and this is going to be inside some of them. Not all of them, but the ones that need it. And I'll show you here in just a second. Alrighty, so let's start off with the smallest one. It's going to be the Drop Point 6. The Drop Point 6 here is the first one on the left. And what makes it the smallest one is that it has the only one LED, just like the Drop Point 2 has only one LED. And it has only the back side is covered with the green grabber rock hard material for the algae to attach to. So it's very simple. Same size container. It's an injection molded heavy duty container. They all are. So it's just the back side that's covered with the rock hard green grabber material. The air in all of them comes down and goes back around and comes out the bottom. So in this particular 1 LED Drop Point 6, the 1 LED shines roughly to the middle of the green grabber material. And I'll just plug that in right now so you can see. There we go. 1 LED. Okay. So I'll leave that on. The other common features are that the air and the power go in the middle. Actually, the power comes and goes in here. The air goes in the middle, and the air comes out this little hole here and goes up, bubbles up. On the bottom of this Drop Point 6, you have your water inlets and the water outlet here in the middle. Okay, so they're just holes in the bottom. So I'll go ahead and turn this light off now. And in this particular case, the air tubing comes around here and has little slots in the tubing. This particular case has 2 little bitty slots, and you can, just like the hog scrubbers, you can play with them to have more or less air as you need. Over here is a weight. This is a weight that's encased in aquarium safe black silicone, very nice and solid, so that it will sit And when you're hanging it, usually most people are going to be hanging this in the back of their all-in-one aquarium, although you could hang it in the display. And of course you could hang it in a sump. So you're going to hang this in and you're going to leave it off the bottom so that water can circulate here. Alrighty? So you're going to hang that off the bottom and just connect up the tube somehow. Okay? And then you'll run it like this. And if you put this in your display, especially if it's in freshwater where it grows stringy algae, the algae is going to come out some here on the bottom, okay, as well maybe as on the top, and the fish are going to eat. So, but anyway, if it's just in the back of the all-in-one sump, then it'll just drop in. You just pull that out, you open it up, and if it's salt water, you'll eventually need to be able to just take a handful out like that. But if it's growing slime to begin with, just use a toothbrush to clean that out. Alrighty? And if you need to clean the tubing, it just pulls out like this, and there's a little cap, little end plug on it, and the little end plug comes out like that. Alrighty? Make sure we can see that on the camera. And then you can just blow through the tubing to clean it out. If you need to set the tubing in some vinegar to help clean it out, maybe it's about a year old and it's built up some deposits in there, you can just get a little plate and put some vinegar in the plate and just set this in there, only about this deep, and it'll soak right in there as needed. But it does come with a syringe. So that's what this little bag is right here. You can just keep this little bag on your instructions so you always have it. Okay? And same syringe that you find in many Salifert test kits. Okay, and so you would just put some water or maybe some vinegar in the little syringe and just put it in just like that. Or you can do it from the other end to push out this way. Alright, so that's included. Very easy to do. And don't push the plug all the way in. Only put it in about halfway. Okay? Only about halfway, and that way you can get your finger on it and easily pull that out. So that's the drop 0.6. Alrighty, that's the entry-level larger drop. And it's designed for a lot of basic situations in smaller tanks with less rock that generally don't have phosphate problems. It's good for phosphate up to about 0.2 ppm. So 0.2 ppm, you're probably fine with that as long as you're feeding less than 0.6 cubes of frozen food per day. There's other amounts of food that you can find in the instructions. Alright, so that's the drop 0.6. Now, let's look at the drop 0.6x. That's the second one right here. The drop 0.6x is designed to be the same growth area as the drop 0.6. That's why it's a 0.6. Okay, so the growth area is the same. It can grow the same amount of algae here on the same type of rocks. The only difference is it has extra lights. It has extra red LEDs. It has 2 instead of 1. That's 100% more light. So they're kind of focused here and kind of focused here. Alrighty. Obviously, when you're cleaning with a brush or whatever, you do not want to hit the lights. They're triple sealed in epoxy, so they're pretty tough, but you just don't need to go hitting them or anything like that. The tubing is the same. The tubing is the same. The weight is the same. The circulation holes are all the same. The only difference is the extra LED here. This can get you into water which has phosphate up higher to maybe 0.3 ppm. So for those that you're not feeding much at all, no more than 0.6 cubes of food a day, then if your phosphate is below 0.3 ppm, this would be a good one to have. Of course, more light grows better in general, but it's most important when you're first running the scrubber for the first couple of months and you're really pulling a lot of phosphate out. The more phosphate you have in the water, the stronger LEDs you need to combat that. So we'll plug that in. The 0.6x, there we go. Twice the light, as you can see. Also, just like the 0.6, the holes need to be off the bottom. So if you set this in the back of your all-in-one aquarium or in your display, keep it off the bottom so it can circulate here. It does put out some little red dots of light, if you can see that. Little red dots right there. Okay? In the back it probably won't matter. If it's in your display, maybe the fish will have fun playing with the dots. Okay, but you should know that it does that on this particular model. Okay? And then there's a little bit, a tiny little dot here on the top. Okay, the rest of that's the same as the drop 0.6. So I'll unplug that. Okay, so now let's take a look at the next one, which is the drop 1.2. Okay, that's this one. Now the reason for the big jump in numbers is because you have more growth area. The number here is the size of the growth area that you have for algae to attach to. The more growth area you have, the more algae can attach and grow, which means the more feeding you can do to your aquarium and the nutrients can still be pulled out. So you see the much larger growth area here. The 0.6 and the 0.6x are only the back wall, but this one 1.2 has the left wall and the right wall also covered in the green grabber rock hard growth attachment materials. So you have a much larger area. It's not really 3 times the area because there's some overlap here in the middle. The algae is going to attach to the same algae attaches to both walls. But the equivalent is about 1.2. So that's 1.2 cubes of frozen food per day feeding, and that's what it's designed to do. Alrighty. So the other difference is that the tubing obviously needs to feed bubbles to all 3 of these walls. So the tubing here, if you can see, is a circular tubing. From here on up to the biggest one, it uses a circular tubing. Okay, so let's plug that in. Let's see how it looks. The 1.2. So now we're up in LEDs. Each model we go up bigger has an extra LED. And of course this has the extra green grabber materials. So you have these 2 shining here, this one's shining there. And another big difference, you'll see now, this is the first one that has this bottom plate. So this bottom plate blocks all light pretty much from coming out the bottom, which means that you no longer have to really worry about putting red dots on the bottom of the display if you put it in the display. There's no red dots here. Alrighty. Also, it allows it to sit. So this is the first one that you can just set on the bottom of your sump or your back compartment or your display. You can even set it on sand. Just don't push it into the sand. Just set it lightly like that, and you can still get the circulation that you need right there on the bottom. So the tubing here goes around like that and stops right there. There is a air outlet slot right there, and then there's one here, and there's one there. So there are little slots for each wall. By the way, before these are boxed up, they're all put underwater, and the little slots are all adjusted so that they have pretty much even flow out all of the bubbles. So when you get it for your aquarium, don't mess with the tubing. Just put it in as it is and see how it runs based on the pump you have. Because we've all adjusted these, and we actually cut them with an X-Acto knife before we box them to make sure they're pretty equal in flow. Alrighty, and then we turn the flow down on the pump so that we get fairly even flow no matter what the pump is set on. And we're doing this on the Fusion 700 pump, which is adjustable to a low flow. Of course, more flow is always better, so you get stronger bubbles all the way around. So, as you see, the 3 LEDs. Alrighty. Let's go ahead and unplug that because it's very bright. Okay. So the tubing here, let's just say you've been running it for months and months, and you need to clean the tubing. It pops out really easy. It just comes out like that, and it's ready to clean. This little plug comes out just like the one I showed you before a minute ago, and you can use the syringe to put in water from this end, or from the other end comes out down, or you can use vinegar if you need to dissolve the lime buildup that some people get on the inside. And as a last resort, if you really want to clean it and don't mess around with having to do it and watch it, just set the whole thing in a little pan of vinegar like that. So the vinegar is about this high. That will completely dissolve all the lime buildup, and it won't get any on your algae. So you can just close this, set it in a little plate of vinegar about this deep, and go mess with your aquarium for 2 hours. When you come back, it should be completely clean. And it doesn't hurt the algae because the vinegar doesn't go up to the algae. Alrighty. So, but this little tube here comes right out. It's the same from here to the bigger ones. And this one's even replaceable. So if you can see that there's a connector right there, this whole tube can be replaced if needed. Usually would never really be needed. Alrighty, so that goes right in there. And remember, use it first before you go messing with the slots, because they were pre-tested when they were put together. So this drop 1.2 has 3 LEDs, which is pretty strong. It's the first one where the LEDs are behind the green grabber material, and it is also the first of the sizable ones of the series here. It also has the weight. So this is the recommended one if you have no idea which one to get. If you don't know which one, you don't know what your phosphate measurements are, you have no idea, get the drop 1.2, because it has enough features to take care of most situations. Alrighty, so it has most of the area covered in green grabber material, has good strong lighting, it has bubbles all the way around, it has the little plate to set on the bottom so you don't have to deal with holding this up, and it's strong enough for most phosphate situations, and it's not too expensive. So this is the recommended one. If you have no idea which one to get, you'll be okay with this one for most situations. The drop 1.2. Alrighty, so now let's get a little bit stronger. Oh, by the way, the drop 1.2, okay for water up to 0.4 ppm. 0.4 ppm. But again, that's the one to consider if you have no idea and you don't want to test your water. But now let's go to the stronger 1.2x. As always, the X means extra LEDs. Everything else is the same. So you can expect that the green grabber material is the same, the weight's the same, the tubing's the same, the foot on the bottom is the same. Everything's the same except this has 4 LEDs instead of 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. By the way, when you're brushing the green grabber material, let's say with a toothbrush in your sink or wherever, don't of course use any kind of metal or anything sharp on the LEDs. They're kind of hard to see when they're not on. So you may scrape them by accident. So you don't want to do that. They are triple sealed in epoxy, but if you took something really sharp to it, you could, of course, you could damage it. So let me turn those LEDs on so you can see what they look like, all 4 of them. Alrighty. Notice no light coming out the bottom. Tiny little bit here from the side, but you don't get those dots on the bottom that you do with the smaller ones. Also a little bit from the side here. Generally, all of the lights kept inside for most situations. So the 4 LEDs is recommended for water up to 0.5 ppm phosphate. 0.5 ppm phosphate. Same situation with the tubing, comes right out, plug comes right out to clean if needed. Couldn't get easier than that. You might notice that the top here is not covered with green grabber material, neither is the bottom. That keeps it very easy to clean with a toothbrush. There's nothing for growth to stick to here, so it's not going to clog the holes. Alrighty, so same weight. It can still be suspended by this if you need it to do that, but it is capable of just setting down on the bottom. drop 1.2x. Alrighty, now getting to the biggest ones, let's look at the drop 1.4. 1.4 meaning 1.4 frozen cubes of food per day. Also, don't forget you have to take into account your rocks if you have problem rocks. Each 50 pounds of problem nuisance algae covered rock adds 1 cube a day. Okay, so if you have 50 pounds of rock in your nano tank, but you only feed 0.4 cubes a day, well, the 50 pounds of rock adds another cube. So there's your 1.4 cubes of food a day. And this has even more light, so it's suitable up for 0.6 ppm phosphate in the water. That's getting pretty high, 0.6 ppm phosphate for most people, certainly for reef tanks, okay? So let's take a look at this. What makes it 1.4 is the fact that now we have a lot more growth area than before. The front is now covered with green grabber materials. That's a lot of extra growth space. It's also extra white to reflect more light. The more white reflection you get of the red light, the more it can enable growth in high nutrient water. Also, you notice the strings, of course. The strings give it three-dimensional growth on the inside because strings are three-dimensional by their nature. There's no way that you can have just one side. The light can always get to all sides of it. So you have the most area, 1.4 size here, and you have, of course, an extra light. So let's show you the extra light. Now you have 5 LEDs, and it's very bright. The 5th LED is on the back wall. Of course, why? Because that's shining forward to light up the front. So you have the outside pretty much identical. You wouldn't be able to tell anything from the outside. But the inside, a tremendous difference. A lot of work going into getting this, all this put in here and getting all the wiring and everything secured and sealed and in the right place, so that you just have to reach in and grab the growth. Alrighty. So the tubing is exactly the same, except it has an extra slot on the front. I guess I can turn these lights off. You get the idea. There's an extra slot here in the tubing on the front to, of course, to put bubbles up the front. So this one's going to have bubbles in 4 places, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And again, we've tested these before we box them, so the bubbles come up pretty evenly before we box it. So don't change anything before you at least try it first, alrighty? But the cleaning of the tubing is the same. You can set it in vinegar just the same. The LEDs, just look where they're at when you're cleaning so you don't scratch them. Otherwise, the operation is pretty much the same. Alrighty. It's a little heavier, of course. So that's the 1.4. And now, the biggest one, the hardest to build, is the 1.4X. Imagine that, the biggest one. So, what's different about this? Well, you know that the X means extra LEDs, and you can't see it here, but sure enough, there's 2 LEDs on the back wall to light up this front panel right here, more. 2 on the back wall. Let's take a look at those. It also has 2 power supplies. See the 2 cords here and the 2 cords here? The power supply box I have hanging up, so I can't show you that, but there's 2 of those with 2 separate plugs. So that gives you the option. It's the only one that has the option of low power. So let's show you that. Here's low power. Okay, we can see that pretty good. 2 LEDs on the back wall, that's it. So if you only had 2 LEDs in the whole thing, this would be a fairly low power scrubber, because once some growth fills in and covers up those surfaces, 2 LEDs is basically like the drop 0.6x over here. Alrighty. However, once the growth surfaces cover in some type of coverage, green or brown or darker or what have you, then you plug in the second power supply, or you have it on your reef controller for it to come on, and that turns on the second supply. So now it's 4 LEDs on the side, if you can see that. Again, everything is behind the rock hard texture, so everything's hidden. You can't see all the wiring. It's a maze of wiring back there to make it happen. Alright, so that's 4. And then of course for the high power you plug in both at the same time, or you put it on your reef controller both at the same time, and all 6 are on at one time. And when you have lots of dark growth or it's packed full of green hair algae, you want all 6 lights running at the same time. And that's how you're going to get the most filtering from this. Okay, so I can't plug them both in at the same time right now because I only have one power plug. But I'm sure you get the idea. The 2 power supply concept makes it possible for this to go up to the highest phosphate level, currently recommending 1.0 ppm phosphate. So this one for 1.0 ppm phosphate. Everything else with this would be the same as the others as far as cleaning the tubing, using a toothbrush to clean off the surfaces, being able to set it on the bottom of sand or the compartment, or just lifting up like that. So now let's look at some general things. First of all of them have changeable power supply cords. Alrighty, so here's the typical power supply cord, the way it's going to come in the box. This is just a regular laptop power cord. All Santa Monica Filtration power supplies for all the scrubbers use one like this. So the way that this works, this is just like your laptop power supply, and so it's going to come like this with a US cord. Now of course you could just cut the cord off and put a plug for Europe or Australia or China or something, and it still works on 240 volts just fine. You're ready to go. But it might look a little nicer if you just unplug that. It's just a regular, it's called a C7 and C8. One of these is a C7, the other is a C8, and they match. And most laptop computers use these. And in fact, you can get one off your laptop computer and just plug it into there, and then you have yourself a nice plug from your own country. So it works on both 120 and 240 volts easily. Alrighty. Of course, these kind of things are all over eBay and every other place. Almost any electronic store or computer store, online places, they're just called a power cord. So just a laptop power cord for Australia, laptop power cord for France, laptop power cord for whatever, and it has the little figure 8. Alrighty, so these are like just a few dollars, and then you just plug it in and it looks really nice. Okay. So another thing is that as far as freshwater goes, freshwater, going to go right back to the most recommended scrubber being the 1.2, because for freshwater it grows very thin, stringy algae. Okay, it doesn't get thick and bushy like saltwater. So since a freshwater scrubber, you're going to have to take it to the sink. You probably won't be able to reach in and grab growth out of freshwater. You'll be using a toothbrush. So in that particular case, it doesn't help to have strings get in your way. So these bigger ones who have strings here, it's hard to brush around those because it is. But this is easy. Just get in here with a brush, brush it out, wash it under your faucet, and put it back, and it's ready to go. So again, the drop 1.2 recommended for freshwater. The smaller drops would work also for freshwater. The 1.2x would also work for freshwater, but generally this is the recommended place here. Also, as far as eliminating bubbles, okay, if the water level is this high and this is underwater, of course bubbles come up. But if you just position it right here, it eliminates all the bubbles. Okay, so just by elevating this so that the water level is here, it has this is the built-in bubble remover, so it takes care of that for you, and the bubbles are automatically eliminated. Whether you do that in your display or your sump below or your back compartment behind, it all works the same. And you don't really lose too much growth area, just about maybe ½ an inch or so, so that's not too bad. And it completely removes the bubbles. And it runs quieter too, because you don't have bubbles coming out like this. But for most people, the drop is designed to go in the back compartment of an all-in-one Nano, maybe even a Pico, all right, aquarium. So those back compartments are designed to handle bubbles for the most part. Let's see, what else? Cleaning. Don't forget that when you start running a scrubber, especially in salt water with higher nutrients, even the bigger ones, when you start them on lower power, you're going to get a slime buildup, and the slime is going to cover the green grabber materials, and you want to remove that slime. Here in the instructions, we have a special color page now showing different examples of what the slime growth would look like. And a lot of times, like it shows here, the slime growth will let go because slime does not hold on very well. So in the first week or first couple of weeks, you want to make sure that you take the scrubber to the sink and use a toothbrush to clean all the slime off. That's going to show the white surfaces again, which makes more light. It's going to allow green hair to attach better. So the green hair is trying to attach in salt water. It's getting covered by the slime. Once the green hair gets a little bit longer, it can reach out past the slime and start growing on its own. But when it's really, really short and it's new, the slime covers it. So you want to clean that slime off, especially before the slime lets go and blocks the hole on the output there. So again, the drop 1.2 is recommended if you have no idea what you need or what you're doing. If you have no idea if scrubbers are for you and you just want to try something, then the drop 0.6 would be certainly better than nothing and would give you some chance to kind of see something grow. If you have real nutrient problems, your rocks are covered in algae, nuisance algae sticking up everywhere, it's been a problem for a while, you're going to have to go with the bigger ones. Yeah, the 1.4 or the 1.4x, just to have a realistic chance of battling the high nutrients in there and pulling the phosphate out of your rocks into the water so it can go from the water into the scrubber. Alrighty, so that is the new larger drop scrubbers from Santa Monica Filtration. I hope you like yours. Here's how the shade plastic material works on the larger drop scrubbers, starting with the 1.2 and the rest. They're going to come with this plastic black shade material with the little instructions on it, and when you open it up, they're going to be, or it's going to be like that. Okay, so that's how it's going to come in the box. And the reason for that, of course, take off the paper and remove the paper clips, the metal paper clips. But what you're going to do is just run it just like this, and that's going to reduce the light on the inside, because the scrubber, when it's new, the green grabber material is so white, it reflects so much red light that it's too much light for algae to grow. So you need to reduce that light. And then once the surfaces are covered with material, with growth, then you can pull out the black material, the black shade, and go to, that makes it full power. The 1.4X, of course, has a low power mode to help with this, but it's still going to come with the cloth, just to make sure that you can really get the strength of the light down. Whenever the growth is completely white and there's no sign of growth at all, that usually means that the light is too strong for the amount of nutrients in the water. Usually it's a new tank or an ultra low nutrient tank or something like that. So use the black plastic material, and of course take this off first. I want to mention about the safety feature of the power. These laptop computer type power supplies are isolated from the wall, from the mains, which means that you plug it into the mains, there's no real connection between this side and the side that goes on to the scrubber. So that it's only connected by magnetic connection in between. You can actually plug this into the wall and drop this power into the wire, or drop this wire into the water, and actually nothing will happen. And if it had an LED, the LED would continue to work. So this is a complete isolated, it's called an isolated power supply, and it does that by, there's only a magnetic connection, there's no real connection between the wall and the scrubber, and that's what keeps it safe. Of course, you should always use a GFCI power cord power plug-in, available at any aquarium or hardware store or online. A GFCI plug-in, and that just is an extra safety thing for any aquarium equipment, and that is the safety feature of the isolated power supply.